2017 Hyundai Elantra. So your career didn't turn out how you'd hoped. Who would have guessed that master's degree in art history wouldn't pay six figures? Still, these cars are stupid easy to work on. Common maintenance is cheap and easy, so you should absolutely give it a try yourself. This one just needs front brake pads and rotors and hasn't had an oil change in 15,000 miles, so let's get to it. We'll start with the brakes. These are the tools and supplies I used. Grandpa's jumbo C-clamp, some disc brake lube, a 17mm socket, as well as a 14 and a 21, Phillips screwdriver, and some brake clean. Carb cleaner works too, or alcohol or acetone, any solvent. And yeah, you're going to want a torque wrench. And here are the parts you'll need. Brake rotor, YH32, whatever, and some ceramic brake pads. Both of these are from Advanced Auto Parts and work great. First things first, world's most conspicuous jack points. Super easy to find. Don't forget to hit the parking brake. And use jack stands. Get your 21mm socket on your cordless roto smacker and remove the wheel. Or you could always use the Amish version. That works fine too. These should not be this tight. Previous mechanic, I'm calling you out. Next, we need to extricate the caliper by removing these two 14mm bolts. On the driver's side, I recommend undoing the top one first, otherwise the caliper is going to rotate on you when you go after the second bolt, which is fine but annoying. Undo the bottom one first on the passenger side. Pull the caliper off. Gimme the caliper. Give me the caliper. Come on, give it to me. Give it up. Drop it. You can hang the caliper from the coil spring while you work, or you can just let it hang lightly on the hose. These rubber hoses are tough as shit and can handle hundreds of pounds. So having a 7-pound caliper hanging from it ain't gonna do nothing. If you're just doing pads, you can skip to here. Otherwise, we've got to get this pad bracket off. 1 and 2 big 17mm bolts. And off she comes. Rebuilding these is easy enough to do in the driveway, but I'm going to go over to the workbench so I can show you in better detail. If you've never done this before, take a bunch of pictures so you can get everything together same-wise. There's details like which pad has the wear indicator and which way the springs go. 4 pads come in a box. 2 have wear indicators and 2 don't. Rather than pull the old pads out, I find it's easier to push them in. Pop these spring clips out. Clean them up with a wire wheel if you're going to reuse them, but frankly, all but the most basic pad sets will come with brand new shiny spring clips. Although, and again, this is an Elantra, so. These just snap in like Legos. Make sure you're putting it in the exact way the old one came out. Get yourself a bottle of brake lube. I prefer green apple flavored because, frankly, it comes with a critical ingredient, the brush on the lid. Lube up all the channels so the pads can move freely. Also get the ears of the pads where they slide in and out, as well as the backing plate where it rubs up against the piston in the caliper, as well as the backing plate on the outer pad where the caliper touches it. Basically, any metal on metal surface, lube it up so it don't get stuck. Except, of course, the surface of the pad where it touches the rotor, but frankly, that would just be Darwinism. Getting these greased up pads in can be tricky. My favorite method is to stick them in sideways like this, and then rotate it 90 degrees once they're in. Then you can install new springs or reuse your old ones. I can tell you with certainty that you can skip these springs with no ill consequences, but frankly, it's not that hard, so why not put them on? All done. Nope. These slide pins can bind up and cause your brakes to stick, so always pull them out wipe the old grease off, and slather them up with new grease before you put them back in. See that groove there? The boot just pops back on. Now to replace the rotor. Some cars have these little Phillips screws to hold the rotor to the hub. Usually on older cars up here in the Union, they rust up and you gotta drill them out. There's some fierce internet debate about whether you need to reinstall these or not, but much like internet debate itself, they belong in the trash. They're only there to help with manufacturing. Keeping them is like keeping the cable tie on your new appliance. Not only does it not help, but it'll actually get in the way later. People will say, oh, it keeps the rotor from rotating. Listen, partner, if 5 lugs torqued to 80 foot-pounds on the studs can't keep the rotor on, these dinky M8 Phillips screws ain't gonna do diddly squat. I'm an engineer, trust me, they're only on there to help on the assembly line. Chuck them. Even without the screws, you may find the rotor is corrosion welded on. Best trick? Screw 1 lug nut on 1 stud, just to keep the rotor from blasting off and giving your cameraman donkey teeth. Get yourself a hammer and some fight music. New rotor time. See that? Nope, I'm not drooling. That's oil. These usually sit in a warehouse somewhere in Mexico or Malaysia, so it keeps them from rusting on the shelf in the humidity. Pick out your favorite solvent and wipe it all off. Don't forget the back. Get it all, or your first couple stops will be a dicey smoke show. Slip the new rotor on. And no, it doesn't matter if those screw holes line up with anything. The only reason the new rotors even have screw holes is because the manufacturers have to copy the factory ones exactly, or else they can't legally claim to be OEM replacements. Slip your freshly rebuilt pad bracket assembly on and install the 2 17mm bolts. Ugh, I hate the sound of dry threads. Where's my medicine? Fun fact, torque specs do not apply to dry, crusty threads. That feels much better. Torque both 17 mils to 70 foot-pounds. Go to put the caliper on and, oh no, it doesn't fit. Not even close. What a disaster.
False.
We just gotta compress it. But before we do that, I need to show you something up in the power barn. See that? It's your brake fluid reservoir. And see the fluid level? It's 1 inch below max. That's because the pads were paper thin. Once we compress the piston, it's going to push the fluid back up and potentially overflow the reservoir, and brake fluid ruins paint. So, as you compress the piston, keep an eye on your fluid level, and if it gets dangerously high, just suck some out with a turkey baster. My favorite tool for compressing pistons is P-Paul's old jumbo C-clamp here. Everyone has one in their garage somewhere. Made in America. One end goes inside the cup like that, and then you compress it against the banjo bolt on the other side. See what happens? Stop when you get the slightest indication that it might be bottomed out. If you try to power through the bottom, you'll just break it. Can you see how much the fluid level rose? Almost up to the max mark. Now the caliper should slip over easy like Sunday morning, and get your 2 14mm bolts started. And torque to 20 foot-pounds. Girls don't like boys with dry wheel studs. I like motor oil. Used or new, it doesn't matter, because it has some sticktivity and it won't run off after a couple miles. Get the lugs hand tight and lower the car until the tire kisses pavement so it doesn't turn when you torque the lugs to their 80 foot-pound specification. Don't forget to do star pattern. Lower the car and go for a test drive. The pedal's going to sink to the floor the first 2 to 3 times as the caliper self-adjusts, so do that before you set off into the wild blue yonder. Alternate 1 to 2 slow gradual stops with 1 to 2 hard fast stops to help the new pads bed together. Thanks for watching. Link to the oil change video in the description.